Good evening. Welcome to the December Rushcliffe Borough Council's Cabinet meeting, last meeting 2022. I'd just like to remind everyone that the Cabinet meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Recording the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. I don't think we have any opposition group leaders here at the moment, do we? So we just need to know if there's any apologies for absence.
We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Abby Brennan. Thank you.
Okay. No declarations of interest in the room at all? No. No citizens. Minutes of the previous meeting from November. If we could just hear those. So proposal to accept those minutes from Councillor Edovin, seconded by Councillor English. All those in favour to accept those minutes? That's carried unanimously. If you could note, just note that they've been proposed and seconded in there. So citizen questions. We have any citizens questions today? We have no opposition group leaders questions, I understand. So we'll go on to the first item on the agenda, which is the revenue and capital budget monitoring for 22-23 financial update of Q2. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, financial update revenue, capital Q2. This is a report on the budget position as at the 30th of September. And you will, of course, all have heard a slightly more updated picture at the budget workshops. However, for this meeting, I will just bring out the important points of this report. The overall picture is positive, with a predicted net efficiency of 831,000. However, the position is likely to change throughout the year, with additional cost pressures identified. Many of these were discussed, of course, at the budget workshop. Table 1 shows some interesting variances, primarily lost income from our delayed capital projects. On top of this, extra agency costs, extra vehicle maintenance and rental income are all showing an adverse variation from budget. However, on the positive side, investment income at Walton Golf Course, planning fees are all heading in the right direction. And the overall budget efficiency, as I mentioned earlier, 831,000. The revenue monitoring statement for each service area is on Appendix A and is interesting reading. Appendix E shows the latest update for special expenses, which is currently expected to be 61,000. It's above budget primarily due to increased utility costs and extra maintenance. As regards capital, the original capital budget for this year was 24.18 million, and the projected outturn is now 19.2 million, under spend of 4.98 million due primarily to project delays. A few pressures to the accounts are showing. Should we know all about these? Pay increases, inflation, and one other, anticipated collection rates dropping. These were also discussed at the workshop, as is the current situation with business rates. The business rate situation has been very positive to us this quarter, but over the next year or so, we can't rely on this, and the value of the council's share of the pool funds is already reducing. The report has been considered by the corporate overview group and no significant issues were raised. The picture in this report is positive, but as Peter constantly reminds us, there are big issues coming along and it's important we use this positive efficiency wisely. So I'm very happy to read the recommendation, which I hopefully have got here, that the Cabinet approves the attached report, noting the expected revenue budget efficiency for the year of 831,000 and proposals to earmark this for cost pressures. The capital budget efficiencies of 4.98 million, including the reprofiling of provisions totaling 1.965 million, of which 465,000 to 23-24 and 1.5 million to 24-25. And the expected outturn position for special expenses to be 61,000 above budget. So I'm happy to move those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have a second? Councillor Edwin.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we're all aware that there's a lot of cost of living pressures being suffered by our residents, and this update shows that the council itself isn't immune from increasing in prices, and there will be more to come. So it will take sound financial management going forwards. I think one area that was quite interesting that I picked out is that we've actually spent quite a lot on agency staff in two key areas. And one's planning and one is on our refuse team. But I think it's also fair to say that these are both areas that we as a council can demonstrate that we consistently outperform other councils in doing so. So I think, you have to balance between getting the right spend and delivering services for our residents. But overall, it's obviously a very good report that shows the fiscal responsibility of our hardworking finance team. And so I think it's, we need to thank Peter Linfield and all of his team for the hard work they put into making sure that we are still well financially managed, and that, we're very proud of the fact as a council we look after our finances so well. So I'm very happy to second the recommendation.
Any other comments in terms of the finance picture? No, I'd just like to add, Councillor, my thanks to your team, Mr. Linfield. Again, appreciate it's been an incredibly difficult time, and it's good to see these accounts. We know things are going to be tough going forward. Obviously, particularly on planning, as we've seen those increases in fees coming in, I think probably represents a lot of pressures that we've got on the authority in terms of planning and applications coming in. But it's obviously good to see that we are seeing that increase. Appreciate those difficult matching resource with the fees coming in there. So, and as always, I think every time we say the time frame delays to do with capital, isn't it? To do with these big projects that we always know that when we take these on, to do with the supply chain issues at the moment, it's always going to be challenging. But at least they're the right way, and that we're not reporting way over budget on these, and hopefully 2023 we're going to see delivery of these projects on time and on budget. So proposed then by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Edwards. All those in favour to accept those recommendations? Carry unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Leisure Facility Strategy Midpoint Review. Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the Borough Council strapline includes the phrases great lifestyle and great sport, and this report is concerned with a leisure facilities strategy midpoint review, which is closely aligned to these corporate values. There's no statutory requirement to produce a leisure facilities strategy, but it's good practice to have one, to set out our plans, to monitor progress, and perhaps more importantly, to do a reality check to see that we are still on the right track regarding changes both within and outside our control. The COVID pandemic has changed so many things, including leisure, sport and well-being, and the current cost of living pressures are impacting on the amount of disposable income some people have to spend on leisure facilities. And there's also the running costs of those facilities, which we're mindful of. So it's important, I think, that we carry out a midpoint review of our leisure facilities strategy to check that it is still appropriate to all these changes. The current strategy runs from 2017 to 2027, and the midpoint review, as I say, has just been undertaken to assess progress and to identify any changes that are required. The full version of the review is attached to the report as Appendix 1, and it's recommended for approval. And also a draft play and pitch strategy action plan is also attached there as Appendix 2. Several consultations have been carried out with the appropriate stakeholders, and the strategy is supported by 4 guiding principles and several objectives as detailed in the report in items 4.7 and 4.8. Rushcliffe Council has and continues to invest significantly in its leisure facilities, and the multi-million-pound flagship development of the new Bingham Leisure Centre, which opens early next year, is testimony to this. To conclude, the report can best be summarised by my reading of the recommendations set out in item 2, namely, it's recommended that Cabinet A, adopts the updated leisure facilities strategy 2017 to 2027, incorporating the midpoint review 2022. B, supports work to develop the detailed specification for capital investment into Cotgrave Leisure Centre and Keyworth Leisure Centre, which are already included in the capital programme for 2023-2024. And finally, C, delegates authority to the Director Neighbourhoods in consultation with the portfolio holder for communities and climate change to approve the final content of the associated Playing Pitch Strategy Action Plan refresh. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor. To have a seconder, please. Councillor Moore.
Switch yours off, Richard. Yeah, it gives me great pleasure to second this. It's an excellent report, Dave. I've actually read this while I was having a cup of tea this afternoon, and it is a very thorough report. A lot of work got into this, so congratulations to you and your team doing it. I just look basically at the 6 objectives for the next few years. I like to see objectives. One of them really appealed to me, which was to retain 5 indoor leisure facilities and ensure they're fit for use, because it hasn't always been like that. And I'm very, very pleased. And I know certain members from the Keyworth area must be even more pleased about that. So supporting partners and parishes to deliver the priority projects of the strategy. It really is good. And I know the support we gave to Eastleigh when you see that what's happened over in Eastleigh. And there's so many things going on. This joint working is extremely good because I've actually witnessed it. Addressing inequalities in participation, working with health services to see what we can do to keep the health of the people in Rushcliffe good. Maintaining the existing local standards for provision of open space, children's play and allotments. Yeah, people forget that allotments is a fantastic exercise. A morning digging in an allotment is probably a lot harder work than a round of golf. But creating more outdoor wellbeing opportunities, walking, cycling through the borough, active travelling. I think it's a wide-ranging document that supports everything that happens in this borough. So I'm absolutely delighted to second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, and we'll strike the golf analogy off the minutes, please. No, I think he's absolutely right, and despite the financial pressures, it's really good to see us investing in our leisure facilities. Very, very strong indeed, and indeed in places like Cotgrave and Keyworth, and obviously the flagship going forward 2023 with the new Bingham Marina as well. So no, it's an excellent report, and thank you, Mr. Banks, for your team as well for the amount of effort that's been put in there. We're very, very proud of our sport, as I say. Councillor Upton said, it appears in our strap line. And Rushcliffe is renowned not only for our professional sport, but also our facilities. And as Councillor Moore said, even look at the likes of the allotments and things, they are part of the leisure. They really are. And as people get to the age of Councillor Moore, then they know that allotments are obviously a lot more useful, aren't they, for people at that age? Lovely. So as proposed then by Councillor Upton, seconded by Councillor Moore, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, moving to the next item on the agenda is the Streetwise annual report, which will be given by myself. So this is a backward-looking report, and obviously in the context that Streetwise now has come back to the authority back in September of 2022. But this obviously report goes back to March 2022, and significantly what has to be mentioned, of course, has been the pandemic and the way in which Streetwise has actually come through this. So this report has actually been considered by the scrutiny group back in the 1st of November, and they were satisfied with the report, but they raised some points which are on item 4.4 on page 96. That's in there. So it's broken down into several areas. You'll see Appendix A. I'm not quite sure we've got Appendix A and Appendix C on this report. I don't know what happened to Appendix B, but on my papers. But Appendix A is a financial statement, which goes to March 2022, and Appendix C is basically the operational report by the company secretary and the contracts management team. In terms of that report, as it talks about performance, obviously the big impact of COVID, what you cannot get away from, of course, was also the significant loss of the Metropolitan Housing contract over this period. But we also highlighted in those increase in business outside of the contract. So although in fact the Metropolitan did contribute a significant amount to turnover, when you look at the changing cost of sales in terms of profit, it probably is a good indication it wasn't the most profitable contract there anyway. In terms of this report, it reflects the performance there across community development and neighbourhoods, events, and also ground maintenance. And it's probably reasonable and fair to say it was a mixed performance. But of course, as I keep saying there, in the context of the pandemic, and of course the difficult environmental conditions that he was actually working in from a competitive nature in there. I think what is good to see in the report in there is to see some of the environmental credentials that Streetwise embarked on in line with the carbon reduction plan there, with the renewing and updating of the fleet, for instance, using alternative fuels, the support for the communities, and also how it also extended its credentials as it moved forward there. When we look at the financials, although we saw this drop in revenue of 9.7%, reflecting again the, as I mentioned, the Metropolitan Housing Trust loss there, we didn't see the corresponding drop there in profits and cost of sale. But it does recognise, it does reflect, as I mentioned before, the competitiveness of the market and the effect of the pandemic. I think one thing is very proud to say, especially in the context that we're seeing with other authorities, is that Streetwise have contributed 8 years of profitability, which I think is excellent. And it left the end of March with nearly £500,000 worth of cash in its bank account. So I think that is a real testament to the management team there and the staff there, who've worked very hard to make sure that the business did stay profitable. But as I say, this has now come into Rushcliffe, so from September. So this will now also go through different scrutiny processes as we go forward. But it is important that we do learn from the process, as the scrutiny group did say, and we do actually analyse this report that I brought here this evening. So I'd like to move the recommendation there, so item 2, page 95, accepting the annual report and considering the comments by the governance scrutiny group. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this, please? Councillor English.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really just to endorse what Councillor Robbins has said regarding this. It is a factual document, and which has been through scrutiny, and there's sort of no real major issues that have come through for that. We had the benefit of the transition with our in-house officers and their teams to take it all forward. So what we can look at is these as the starting base for the transition. You know, for the in-house absorption now of the Streetwise coming in-house. So we've got a foundation level now to look at to compare for going forward to the projected savings and efficiencies. Again, it's not about turnover. As Councillor Robinson highlighted, you know, it's the end of year profits that are important. So, you know, looking forward, I know it's a looking back review, but looking forward to it all. Those changes now in place. You know, they've had the review of staff, contracts, equipment and buildings in order to enhance those profits in the coming years. So they're looking at the contracts, viable contracts, and I'm sure, you know, it will provide an enhanced service for Rushcliffe and a focused dedication to all of Rushcliffe. So I'm confident in the new management, the procedures and everything, and the positivity of the staff, which is important. And that governance is in place with the scrutiny group to have that oversight for the coming year. So I'm happy to second the items at 8 to accept the Streetwise annual report and consider the comments made by the governance scrutiny group. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Upton.
Well, yes, I'd just like to say, in my experience over the last 10 years of Streetwise, I've found the office staff incredibly knowledgeable and good customer care. And importantly, from Radcliffe-on-Trent's perspective, I've never heard anybody criticise the quality of the workmanship that the operatives do on the front line. They keep Radcliffe-on-Trent Main Street pretty much immaculate 7 days a week. You know, and I think it means so much to local residents wherever they are in the country. You know, if you keep control of graffiti and litter and weeds and just leaves, frankly, at this time of the year, I think, they do a really good job. And it's not just me saying that. Many residents have said to me how impressed they are with the quality of the work of the frontline operatives. So I endorse them 100%.
No, thanks, Councillor Upton. And clearly, it is a massive part of quality of life for Rushcliffe, and Streetwise providing this service, as they have done over this last few years outside of the council, has been incredibly important to us. And I think great credit should go to the management team there under Nigel. But as I say, times have moved on now. It's a new climate, and bring them in there in September. We hopefully now should see increased performance there, particularly around the Rushcliffe contract. But we should also reflect and pay credit to the team there. As Councillor Upton said, I think most people would echo those comments that you've made, and provided an excellent service. And I say, from a financial point of view, I'm very proud that to have that sort of cash coming into at £500,000 there in March is excellent under very difficult circumstances. So. Okay, so the proposal from myself that I've set out there, seconded by Councillor English. All those in favour to accept that? It's carried unanimously. Okay, next item. Item 9 is the Bingham Improvement Board update, and I will provide this update from this board. The Improvement Board completed their report and brought to Cabinet in June. It went to full council in July. This is also went to Bingham Town Council, their action plan in October of 2022 there as well. And as I said, I wanted to bring this back after 6 months. I think it's really important because a lot of money, time and effort has gone into this. So it is important that we do reflect and look at the progress that's being made there. So the action plan and the updates are tabled within the actual paper there, and I don't want to go through every item there. I think what's really good, we see the actions and the report that the Bingham Improvement Board did really reflect the professionalism and the experience of that board and the members who actually sat on there. And if we actually have a look at the actual table there, you can see that those actions there were all tangible, they're meaningful, to make a difference to a very difficult situation. And I'm delighted to report back 6 months later that Bingham Town Council, I think, have acted very positively, been very proactive, and reacted well to the actions going forward, and the progress has been made. I think it's probably reflected best by the fact there's actually been no complaints within members since the Bingham Improvement Board report actually came forward. And I don't say that glibly, but I think in terms of the position it actually was in, I think that's a great testament to Bingham Town Council, but also I think to the quality of the Bingham Improvement Board in making sure that they did have a very resilient plan to actually take this forward. So I think from a bad situation, I think we've seen a lot of progress here. I think a lot of credit goes to Bingham Town Council, both to its members and to its office staff, who've worked very hard to make sure this works. I think there's a lot more confidence. I deal with a lot of people in Bingham, and they certainly have more confidence now there with the Bingham Town Council. And ultimately, I think that is probably the best testament of the lot. So I'd like to move the recommendation that is set out there, that Cabinet endorses the progress made and congratulates Bingham Town Council on its commitment to delivering the action plan. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Edwin.
Yeah, I'm very happy to second the recommendation. Obviously, the recommendation in itself is a very simple, single paragraph recommendation. But I think it's, as Councillor Robinson says, it's important that councillors at all levels act properly and in line with Nolan principles. And Bingham Town Council are clearly striving to improve their functionality from the position they were in. I think it's clear from reading the update against the agreed action plan that the council has become not only more civil, but more inclusive, and long may these improvements manifest themselves. And one would hope that in the next elections, we'll maybe see some more candidates coming forward, or even some of those councillors who in the past have served on Bingham Town Council and chose to withdraw from it because of the atmosphere that was pervading. So I think it's great that those improvements have been made, and it's very clear that that's been a lot of hard work by the town council themselves, both as Councillor Robinson says, officers and the councillors. So happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments at all on this? No. Okay. No, I think you're actually right, Councillor. In obviously the fundamentals and Nolan principles that we all work under, and certainly this is what was certainly lacking, unfortunately, at Bingham. And I think this was a really, really strong move forward. I think it was a good indication to other parishes as well that it won't be tolerated, and that the Rushcliffe Borough Council stepped up and made these recommendations and put this forward, and the progress now that's been made, I think, vindicates that. So that's excellent. So as proposed by myself, set out there, seconded by Councillor Edwin. All those in favour? Carry unanimously. Okay, final item on the agenda tonight: the adoption of the Cropwell Bishop Conservation Area. Councillor Edwin. Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Chairman. The final item, but not necessarily the easiest item to get one's head around. I'll start with the sort of legal situation. It's the Planning, Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act of 1990, which imposes a duty, and I stress the word, a duty on us as local planning authorities to designate as conservation areas any areas of special architectural or historic interest, the character or appearance of which it is desirable to preserve or enhance, in our view, I guess. And so that sets the scene as to why we are considering a new conservation area for Cropwell Bishop. And I understand, following requests from some residents and the ward councillor Gordon Moore here, that Cropwell Bishop has been considered for a conservation area designation, and that it has been found to meet the requirements of the 1990 Act. And I understand this is supported as well by the parish council at Cropwell Bishop. So it ticks the boxes as our duty to consider it, and that we've looked at it and we found it meets those criteria. So in August and September this year, there was a extensive public consultation undertaken on the draft conservation area document and associated appraisal and management plans, and this report seeks formal adoption of the proposed conservation area, which is attached as Appendix 1 this evening. Now, conservation area, I understand, is not formally adopted in law until such time as its adoption has been resolved by the council and the notification of that adoption has been published in the London Gazette. I think that's probably the legal bits done. But as you'll see in the recommendations on the report, there is item B, which asks the Cabinet this evening to consider the objections of number 8 Nottingham Road and of Stackyard Close to be included in the proposed conservation geographical area, and asks us to choose a conservation area boundary which either includes or excludes these properties, and the details of these options are given in the appendices to the report. However, item 4.1 of the report states, and I quote, "A copy of the amended conservation area character appraisal is appended to this report, Appendix 1, and is the document which is proposed for adoption." Now, section 5 of the report gives the various comments received and the alternative boundary options considered and the reasons for their rejections in reference to number 8 Nottingham Road and the Stackyard Close properties. And item 5.3 gives details of the 4 boundary options for us to consider. Section 6 of the report also gives the various risks and uncertainties associated with these 4 options around these properties. But in conclusion, unless the Cabinet is minded to change the proposed conservation area boundaries for Cropwell Bishop, the recommendation as set out in section 2 of the report is as follows. It's recommended that A, the conservation area character appraisal in Appendix 1 is adopted as the document which outlines and describes the special architectural and historic character of the conservation area, which it will be desirable to preserve and enhance. I think I'll stop there without being too repetitive. We could debate 4 options on the 2 properties that are objecting, and we could come up with a various mix of options, but the recommendation from the officers who have looked at those and the risks and uncertainties. I think, you know, if you agree to them being taken out of the boundary, then it could be argued that further down the line in the future, then other properties would wish to make a case for, well, we don't want to be included in the conservation, or we have special circumstances. And things change over time, do they not? So I think I would ask the Cabinet to support the recommendation A and the Appendix 1, which excludes the request for the two properties, number 8 Nottingham Road and the Stackyard Close, to be taken out of the proposal, and that we adopt recommendation A as I've just read out. Thank you, Chair.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Moore.
Well, it's my ward. I've been involved in it for an awful long time. It was started off by a group of very enthusiastic villagers who worked with our conservation officer. And then for some reason it stopped, and I found out that the conservation officer had left and the conservation officer came back, and then it was re-energized again. It's been a very thorough job, this has, and I really thank the local residents who've dealt with this. But it has been going on for a few years now. Now, last Tuesday night, I attended the Cropple Bishop Parish Council and asked for the people who started off this conservation area report to be there. So we had quite a large agenda item, and it was unanimous, both from the instigators of the report and all the parish council, that they wanted 8 Nottingham Road and Stackyard Close to be included in the conservation area. And this is the recommendation they asked me to bring forward to the Cabinet tonight. I don't have a lot more to add to it. It's a lovely old part of the village. Like a lot of villages, it's got a lovely little centre like this, and it's surrounded by more modern houses. So I think it's good that we're protecting that part of the village. It's not always easy on a conservation area. Not everybody wants it. And it has been somewhat controversial doing this. Unfortunately, I haven't had to do the door knocking, but this little group of very enthusiastic residents have done all the door knocking, have knocked on every door, explained it all to everybody. The officers have done presentations, there's been leaflets, it's been going on for about 4 years. So I am quite comfortable now, after discussing it fully with the parish council, fully with everybody involved in it, that the recommendation includes those two items. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the uniqueness about Rushcliffe are our conservation areas. I think it's very important that they are given this consideration and debate, and that locals are engaged. It's more than planning, it's about character and retention of our history. But it's complicated. As Councillor Upton said, it's not an easy process, and it should be, really, because there are a lot of issues to take into account. And as you say, Councillor Moore, some people are against it. Some people don't see that it's retrograde, and it's not really what people want. But certainly, when we look at preserving character, particularly on development and the uniqueness of Rushcliffe, these are very important protection, I think, to very unique areas. So I'm very, very supportive of conservation areas, but obviously making sure that democracy is taking place and the right consultation is taking place. Well, what is the timescale for this to come in? No, in terms of. Sorry, I missed this when the timescales are.
It's all down to legal.
Is it? Yeah. Yes, I saw that. Yeah, I just wondered what they. No, I couldn't see. I couldn't see any. I'm sure when I looked through, I couldn't see any date or timescales. It were actually. Somebody could be asked.
How long
Could be asked.
Well, I don't think it takes long. Once we've resolved,
Yeah.
once we've resolved tonight to formally adopt, and then that notice goes into the Gazette, as I understand it, once that notice is published in the Gazette, then that's the end of the process.
So it's fairly soon.
Thank
you.
As we know, many people will be reading that Gazette and responding to it, won't they? Next time we're in there. So, good. Lovely. Thanks very much for the doing that report on that. I think it reflects well, and I appreciate the amount of work the officers put into this as well. And it will be appreciated by the residents there of Cropwell, certainly. So it's recommended there by Councillor Upton, seconded by Councillor Moore. All those in favour to accept those recommendations? And that's carried.
to vote on it.
Oh, yeah. Carried
Not trying to make me talk about it.
carried unanimously. Okay, I think that now concludes the agenda for tonight. Well, I can wish everyone a very, very happy Christmas and a very happy New Year, and look forward to seeing you